Why a married man feels tied to you, and it scares him. Carl Jung. Have you ever noticed that moment when he stops talking, looks away, and you feel that something has changed? It wasn't anything you said. It was nothing you did. But suddenly, that married man who seemed so safe by her side starts to walk away, just when the connection between you has become deeper. Jung said that the human unconscious is afraid of what it most desires. And when a married man feels like he's truly connected to you, not just physically but emotionally, psychologically, even spiritually, something inside him panics. Because this connection is not like the others. It plays on layers he didn't even know existed. She threatens to reveal parts of him that have been hidden for years. And the more real that connection becomes, the more he feels like he's losing control over himself. What really happens in the male psyche when he realizes that you're not just another one? Why is it precisely the true bond that scares you the most? In this video, you'll discover the psychological truth he'll never admit. 1. The moment he realizes you're different. There is a specific moment when everything changes in his head. It's not when you meet, not in the first kiss, not in the first time you get together. It's when he's alone, maybe driving home, maybe lying in bed next to his wife, and suddenly his face pops into his mind without him having called. You simply appear there, occupying a space that did not exist before, and at that moment, something inside him recognizes you are not like the others. Most extramarital involvements work in a safe zone of emotional detachment. These are encounters that happen, but they do not penetrate the deepest layers of the psyche. Man manages to maintain these relationships in a separate box from his real life, as if they were parallel experiences that do not affect who he really is. But with you, that separation begins to crumble. He notices that he starts to care about what you think about him, not just about his performance or appearance, but about who he really is. He begins to want to explain himself, to tell childhood stories, to reveal fears that he has never shared with anyone. And it scares him deeply because he didn't plan it. It was not supposed to be this way. The difference is in the quality of the presence. When he's with you, he feels seen in a way that doesn't happen anywhere else in his life. It's not just physical attraction, it's not just admiration. It is a feeling of being understood in layers that he himself did not know existed. You listen to him in a different way. You react to the things he says with a depth that touches something dormant inside him. And that's precisely where the danger begins. Because when a married man realizes that someone truly sees him, more than the person with whom he shared years of life, the entire psychological structure he built to stay functional begins to tremble. He feels that you have reached a part of him that should be protected, guarded, inaccessible. And now that you're inside, he doesn't know how to go back to who he was before he met you. 2. The projection of the anima. You as a mirror of his soul. Within each man, there is an unconscious image of the feminine that he has always carried. This image is not about real women he has met, but about a feminine essence that lives in his psyche, shaped by experiences, unfulfilled desires, and aspects of himself that have been repressed so that he could function in the masculine world. When he finds you, something extraordinary happens. You become the recipient of this projection. He's not necessarily seeing you as you really are. He's seeing through you an idealized version of everything that is missing in his life. You represent the spontaneity he lost, the emotional depth he never developed, the creativity he abandoned to be practical and responsible. In you, he sees everything he had to sacrifice to become the man he is today. This projection is powerful because it touches on an existential void that he didn't even know he had. For years, he worked on autopilot, fulfilling roles, meeting expectations, being the provider, the husband, the competent professional. But something inside him went dormant. A vital part of his soul was left behind. And when he looks at you, That forgotten part suddenly wakes up and screams for attention. The problem is that he begins to depend emotionally on this projection. You become his bridge with parts of himself that he can't access on his own. When he is with you, he feels more alive, more whole, more connected to something true. But when he moves away, he realizes how dependent he has become on this feeling. And emotional dependence, for a man who prides himself on his own control, is terrifying. He also knows on some level that this image he projects on you is not completely real. You are a real person with flaws, limitations, your own complexity. But he doesn't want to see that. He wants to keep the projection intact because it fulfills a deep psychological need. And the more time passes, the harder it becomes to separate who you really are from what they need you to be. This confusion leaves him at a loss because he no longer knows if he is connected to you or to his own soul reflected in you. If you want to understand why a married man feels tied to you and why it scares him, it's not guilt. It's an unconscious conflict, explained by Carl Jung. Jungmethod, pinned in the first comment. 3. The panic of man torn between two worlds. His mind becomes a battlefield. On one side is the life he has built over the years, the house, the children if he has one, the established routine, the social identity of a married and responsible man. On the other side is this connection with you that stirs something so deep that he can't just ignore it, and he realizes that you can't have both worlds at the same time without one destroying the other. In the morning, he wakes up next to his wife and feels guilty, not just for the physical betrayal, but for something worse, for feeling like you're emotionally somewhere else. He looks at the woman he has shared so many years with and wonders when they stopped really seeing each other. When did the relationship become just a functional partnership to share bills and solve problems? But at the same time, this life represents security, predictability, a structure that works. At night, when he talks to you, he feels like he's finally being himself. You don't have to wear masks, you don't have to pretend everything is fine, you don't have to be strong all the time. With you, he can be vulnerable, confused, even weak. And that freedom is addictive. But it also scares him deeply because he knows he can't sustain it indefinitely without everything else falling apart. He begins to live a double life not only externally, but internally. He develops two versions of himself that do not talk to each other. The version that works in marriage, that goes to work, that solves practical problems, and the version that exists when it is with you, that truly feels, that questions everything, that dreams of a different life. Keeping these two versions separate requires enormous psychological energy. Panic comes when he realizes that he is losing the ability to sustain this division. The two versions begin to bleed into each other. He gets angry at home for no apparent reason. He is distracted at work thinking about you. He begins to question decisions that once seemed right. And the more the division becomes untenable, the more he feels trapped, because choosing either side means destroying the other, and he is not yet ready to take on the consequences of any of these choices. 4. Why real connection threatens your identity. A man spends his entire life building an image of who he is. This identity is made up of layers: what he does professionally, how he is seen socially, what kind of man he believes himself to be, the values he defends. Marriage is a central piece of this construction. Being a husband is not just a role, it is part of how he defines himself in the world. And when a true connection with you arises, that whole structure starts to crack. The threat doesn't just come from the fear of being found out or the practical consequences of a breakup. It comes from something much deeper, the realization that maybe he's not who he always thought he was. If he's able to connect so deeply with another person, what does that say about his marriage? If he can be so vulnerable and authentic with you, why has he never been able to be like that at home? These questions shake the foundations of the identity he spent years building. He always saw himself as someone loyal, reliable, who honors commitments. He may even have judged other men who cheated on their wives, and now he finds himself doing exactly what he condemned. But worse than that, he realizes that it is not just physical desire or moral weakness. It's something genuine, a connection that touches his soul in a way he can't deny, and that completely breaks the narrative he had about himself. The deeper the connection with you, the more he questions all the choices he has made so far. Did she marry the right person or just follow the expected script? Did he build the life he really wanted or just the life that seemed right? Have you known yourself, or have you just been playing a role for so long that you have forgotten who you really are? These questions are devastating because they don't have easy answers. And there is another level of threat. He realizes that if he assumes this connection publicly, he will lose the social identity he has. He will become that guy who abandoned his family, who had no character, who destroyed a home. Even if internally he knows that the situation is more complex than that, he knows that the world will not see nuances. You will only see the man who betrayed. And giving up his own reputation, the respect he has built, the image that people have of him, is almost like dying socially. So he gets stuck between being authentic and preserving who he built himself to be. 5. The shadow revealed through you. Every human being carries within him aspects that have been rejected, repressed, hidden under the surface of the conscious personality. These are parts that did not match the image that the person needed to project to be accepted, loved, respected. In his case, this shadow contains everything that a married, responsible and controlled man cannot be. Impulsiveness, selfishness, the need for freedom, desires that do not fit in the neat life he has built. When it connects with you, these dark parts begin to emerge. Not because you are a bad influence, but because the intensity of the connection loosens the bonds of control he holds over himself. Suddenly, he acts in ways that are not typical of him. He takes risks that he would never take. He feels intense jealousy, possessiveness, the need to have you all to himself, even though he knows he has no right to feel it. And these primal emotions scare him because they reveal a side of him that he doesn't recognize. He always prided himself on being rational, on making decisions with his head and not with his heart. But with you, rationality goes away. He finds himself doing irrational things, lying in increasingly elaborate ways, creating risky situations just to have a few more minutes by his side. And each time he does that, he distances himself a little more from the man he thought he was. The shadow he kept locked away for years now demands space. The most disturbing thing is that he realizes that he likes this less controlled version of himself. When he's with you, he's not just the tired provider or the husband who is forced to keep up appearances. He is wild, intense, full of desire and life. This version of him is truer, more alive, more connected with his own essence. But it is also the version that destroys everything he has built. The shadow does not only bring negative aspects, it also brings positive parts that have been repressed, the ability to feel deeply, to surrender, to be vulnerable, to want something just for yourself without thinking about others first. But precisely because they are intense and genuine, these qualities do not fit into the structure of his life. And the more he allows them to surface when he's with you, the more impossible it is to rebury them when he returns home. He feels that you have awakened a monster within him, but that monster is simply the totality of who he really is. 6. The fear of the transformation that loving brings. There is a big difference between wanting someone and truly loving someone. Wanting is about possession, about filling a need, about having that person available when you need it. Loving is about transformation, and transformation requires you to die to who you were before and be reborn as someone different. When he realizes that he not only wants you, but that he loves you in a way that changes who he is, terror takes over. Truly loving you means that he can no longer go back to being the version of himself that existed before he met you. It means that all the life he has carefully arranged over the years no longer serves. It means that he will have to make painful choices, hurt people, take on devastating consequences. It means that he will have to look in the mirror and admit that everything he built was based on an incomplete version of himself. Transformation requires courage. It requires him to face not only external judgment, but far more cruel internal judgment. He will have to live with the guilt of destroying a family, of breaking promises, of revealing himself to be less upright than he always believed he was. He will have to deal with the disappointment of the people who trusted him, with the looks of reproach, with the loss of respect of children if he has it, with the pain he will cause in someone who did not deserve this. And she has another fear. What if the transformation is not worth it? What if he leaves everything behind, assumes the relationship with you publicly, and discovers that what seemed so intense and true was just projection, fantasy fueled by prohibition? What if the connection was only strong because it existed in the shadows, in the stolen moments, in the adrenaline of secrecy? He is terrified of destroying everything and then realizing that he has made the biggest mistake of his life. That's why he gets arrested. The more he loves you, the more he realizes that truly loving you will require him to completely transform, and transformation is a symbolic death. The person he was will cease to exist, and even if a better, more authentic, more whole version can be born on the other side, no one faces their own death without terror. So he stays in this in-between place, loving you, but afraid to take on the consequences of what that love demands of him. 7. The war within, security versus authenticity. Inside his head, there is a constant battle between two fundamental human needs, security and authenticity. Security is in the life he already has. It's years invested in a relationship, in a house, in a routine that works. Even if this life is not emotionally satisfying, it is known, predictable, controllable. He knows exactly what to expect from each day. There are no painful surprises, no existential risks. Authenticity is in you, or rather, it is in what he can be when he is with you. It is the possibility to live according to what he really feels, to honor his own desires, to choose what makes him feel alive instead of what is just safe. But authenticity comes with a high price. Instability, uncertainty, social judgment, devastating guilt, possible loss of everything he knows. His mind keeps going back and forth between these two poles. One day he wakes up determined to end everything with you, convinced that he needs to protect the structure of his life, that this is the mature and responsible choice. But at night, when he is faced with the concrete possibility of never seeing you again, of never feeling that connection again, he goes into despair. And then he decides that he will find a way to have both, even though he knows that this is unsustainable. Another day, he wakes up inspired by the idea of dropping everything and starting a new life with you. He feels a different energy, a hope that it is possible to be truly happy. But when you start thinking about the practical consequences, the pain you will cause, the people you will disappoint, the financial instability perhaps, the possibility of regret, courage evaporates, and he returns to the safety of indecision. This internal war consumes him. Every conversation with you feeds into the authenticity side. Every moment at home, especially if it's relatively quiet, feeds into the security side. He's never fully present anywhere because half of him is always in the other world, questioning whether he made the right choice, and the more time he spends in this room, the more he wears out. The worst thing is that he knows that no choice will be perfect. If he stays, he will forever carry the regret of not having had the courage to go after what made him feel alive. If he leaves, he will forever carry the guilt of having destroyed something that existed, of having hurt people who trusted him. And he realizes that this war has no winner. Whichever side he chooses will require him to learn to live with a significant loss. 8. When he finally recognizes the connection. There comes a time, after all the denial, after all the fears, after all the resistance, when something inside him stops fighting. He finally recognizes with all the letters that the connection with you is real. It's not fantasy, it's not just projection. It's not the result of a difficult phase in marriage. It's a genuine connection that touched deep layers of his soul, and this recognition changes everything. When he admits this to himself, a strange peace can appear, even in the midst of chaos, because finally he stops wasting energy trying to deny the obvious, trying to convince himself that he can just forget about you and move on, as if nothing happened. He accepts that you have marked his life permanently, that you have transformed him, that you have revealed truths about him even though they can no longer be ignored. But this recognition also brings clarity about the choice that needs to be made. It is no longer possible to live in the illusion that you can have both worlds indefinitely. You can no longer fool yourself into thinking that everything will magically resolve itself. He realizes that he will have to consciously choose between following the life he has or building a new life based on this connection. And both choices will require him to take responsibility for the consequences. If he chooses to stay in the marriage, he will have to do it consciously and committedly. You can no longer blame circumstances or simply let life happen. You will have to recognize that you are choosing security, stability, and responsibility, even though you know that it means giving up a deep connection that made you feel alive. And you will need to find peace with this choice, even carrying the nostalgia. If he chooses you, he will have to fully assume this decision. You can't do it halfway, keeping one foot in each place. You will have to face the storm that comes with this choice, the guilt, the judgment, the pain it will cause, the complete reconstruction of life. And you'll need to trust that authenticity is worth the price, that living up to its truth is more important than keeping up appearances. Acknowledgement of the connection does not solve anything automatically. In fact, it makes the situation even more complex because it takes away the possibility of pretending that it is not important. But it also brings dignity to what you have. Because when he recognizes that the connection is real, he stops treating it as something minor, as a mistake or weakness. He honors what happened between you, even if he doesn't know what to do with it yet. And this honesty, however painful, is the first step to any true resolution.